What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are building the most boring UFC fight card that I could think of that includes ranked fighters. That's a big caveat because I think we all could build a bad fight card, a bad fight night or something with like a bunch of unranked guys, but I tried to keep it to guys in the rankings, and then I do have one guy who really isn't in the rankings anymore, but definitely has a place on this card. So starting off with the first matchup, we are going with Muhammad Makayev versus Amir Albazi. These guys would probably open up the fight card. I'm doing prelims. I did 4 prelims and 5 in the main card. No early prelims, because like I said, those would just be filled with kind of unranked guys who don't really do a lot. But starting with the first early, or the opener of the prelims, I would have Makayev versus Albazi. Two guys who basically just grapple, and they don't really look for finishes either. I mean, Makayev isn't in the UFC anymore, but after his fight with Manel Cap, I mean, he deserves to be on a list like this, so. And Albazi, he's just a grappler. That's really all he does. He doesn't strike very well, doesn't really look for submissions, and same thing with Makayev. They're just control. It could be kind of fun, like watching the scrambles and stuff, but I think it would mostly just be kind of clinch work, and then Makayev dropping down on the legs like he was doing against, who is it, Alex Perez. So yeah, I don't think this would be very fun. Kind of a stinker to open the card, which is exactly what we want. So next up, we got Michael Chiesa versus Roman Dolidze. I think the fight that's actually happening, Roman Dolidze versus Kevin Holland, could end up being a stinker too, but this one would be basically guaranteed because Dolidze has good enough wrestling defense and Chiesa has no striking really, so he would just be trying for takedowns and he would just keep getting stuffed. But I don't think Roman Dolidze has any finishing power, so he would just kind of barely punch Chiesa, and they would just kind of stand menacingly at each other for 15 minutes. And I will mention, a couple of these matchups are different weight classes. So like Dolidze is in an 85er now, and Chiesa is 170. But they're close enough that I think it makes sense. Like if Chiesa went up for some reason, and that happens a couple more times this card. But I was just mostly looking for boring stylistic matchups. So these two, like I said, I don't think either of them really has any finishing potential on the feet, and then I don't think Chiesa would be able to wrestle Dolidze, and it would just be a snooze fest, a clinch fest, and they would just kind of throw jabs back and forth at each other, and this one's definitely going to decision. I'm going to say that, and Roman Dolidze is getting that decisive 28 split decision or something like that. It's going to be probably have a weird eye poke or something in there too, just for the hell of it. So next up is going to be a fight that could actually happen depending on what happens next, is Bryce Mitchell versus Movsar Evloev. Again, you're going to see a bit of a theme here with kind of grapplers who don't really have any finishing ability. Evloev is a great grappler, but he doesn't really search for submissions, and he doesn't really get any, and I feel like his best wins have come from split decisions, which isn't exactly what you want. And then Bryce Mitchell, I don't know if I've ever seen him finish a fight. And I mean, he's primarily a grappler too, just like Evloev. So I think it would cancel out, and they would just kind of clinch, or be a lot of wall wrestling too, or they would just both try to strike with each other. And I mean, I think we all saw what happened with Bryce Mitchell and Josh Emmett, so we know that he can't strike. Evloev probably has better striking, but I don't think it's obviously not his strong suit. And these guys, if they were striking together, then it would be ugly. I will say that much. But it could be fun if they ended up standing and striking. It could just be really sloppy slugfest. But I think probably it would just be a lot of wall wrestling, and that would just kind of put everybody to sleep. So now that we're done with some of the lighter weight classes, I guess we had welterweight and middleweight in there. We're going to the big boys. Or at least one big boy. We got Marcin Tybura versus Jailton Almeida. This one would be maybe the most boring heavyweight fight you could put on. Jailton Almeida is good enough to be a heavyweight, but he really should probably cut to 205, and I think he'd be a lot better. While Marcin Tybura, I can't really say a single thing that he does well. He's just kind of okay at everything, and he's just big. So that is where a lot of his wins come from, by just being big. And if Jailton Almeida can cut down to 205 and Marcin Tybura is pushing the limit, I mean, I don't know if Jailton Almeida would be able to take him down. And even if he did, it doesn't matter. Like, aside from Romanov, he's not looking for finishes, He's just all about control, and I don't think there wouldn't be anything fun to watch in this fight. I'll just say that. Jailton Almeida's going to do what he always does and throw that front kick and then shoot a double leg. And either Tybura stuffs it, and that's the end. And then we just do that for 15 minutes, or Jailton takes him down and just holds him there until the end of the round, and then we do it all over again. So this one would be boring as hell. They all would. All these fights would be, but this one would be a tough watch, because you just see Marcin Tybura breathing heavily as Jailton Almeida is holding him down. So next, we're going to the main card. This is another one of the fights that we could have seen, actually, but we probably won't anymore, and it's probably a good thing, because I got Aljamain Sterling taking on Chito Vera. This would be very boring, because Chito he's a good striker, but he doesn't throw anything. He just waits until the last minute of each round. So, and Aljamain Sterling has interesting striking, which is a nice way of putting it. His striking is kind of whatever. Lots of kicks, lots of stuff. And I don't think he would really be able to hit Chito on the feet. But I don't know how good Chito's wrestling is. So I don't know if Aljo could just take him down and take his back and sub him like he did with Corey Sandhagen. Or if this would just kind of be an awkward striking fight. So this one probably has the most the biggest chance of having like an actual fun fighting like finish, because I mean Chito could just do what Moraes did to Sterling and like head kick him or kind of knee him in the head and knock him out as he's shooting for a takedown, or Sterling could just take his back and choke him out in 10 seconds, So this one, you got to put something in there for the fans, and so that would be the opener to the main card. Kind of fool people, think, maybe this is going to be a fun fight card until we get to the next fight, which is Neil Magny versus Colby Covington. When you talk about guys who have no finishing power, you are looking at the best right here in the welterweight division. I mean, there's a lot of different physiques in the welterweight division. Like, we'll see one a bit later. But these guys are in the mold of the scrawny 170ers. Like, they don't have the big knockout power that like an Usman does, or JDM, or even Gilbert Burns does. They are accumulators, kind of like the Diaz brothers were. They weren't going to knock you out with one punch there, but they're going to hit you with 115 in one round, and the 116th is the one that knocks you out, So this one would be really gross. Neil Magny's just kind of okay everywhere, and the way to beat him is by kicking him in the legs. So maybe Colby Covington tries to keep it standing and do that, but he's probably going to try to wrestle. And once he gets him on the ground, he's not going to really do anything because he doesn't really have any submissions. And Neil Magny's been around long enough that I don't think he would like try to get up and give his back in the process. I think he would just kind of hang out on the bottom and hope for a stand up or just ride out the round. But either way, this would be very boring and really not that high level, I think. I mean, I'd pick Colby to win this fight, obviously, but and he'd probably get a title shot off of it too, but this would just be a 15-minute snooze fest. And you know what else would be a 15-minute snooze fest? Marvin Vettori versus Sean Strickland. We got a guy who acts like he's going to go to war every time he fights, just to jab and teep for 15 to 25 minutes. And then we got a guy who has the unbreakable chin of Marvin Vettori. I mean, I know another thing I mentioned in my last video that you guys will find out kind of who my likes and dislikes are for fighters, and you're looking at one of the dislikes here. I do not like Sean Strickland, and I think this fight could end up being like the co-main event of a bad pay-per-view, if he doesn't get like a title shot, or if he gets a title shot and he loses to Dricus again. This could like be the co-main event of a pay-per-view, kind of like how Strickland versus Costa was again on the Islam and Dustin card. And this would be so boring because Sean Strickland would just jab Marvin Vettori's face off the whole fight, but it wouldn't hurt him. And I mean, what's Marvin Vettori gonna do? Like, his striking is bad. Like, his striking is whatever. It's better than his wrestling, but he's like how do you see Marvin Vettori winning? It's a decision. And Sean Strickland almost always wins decisions unless they're against Dricus du Plessis, because he just has higher activity, even if they're the same 3 strikes that don't do any damage. So this one would be a snoozer. This one would put me to sleep real fast. And then you get to hear Sean Strickland on the post-fight talk about how he deserves a title shot, or, Chris Curtis killed his wife or something. I don't know. But speaking of Chris Curtis, he would be in the co-main event against Leon Edwards. There's no coincidence that both Leon Edwards and Colby Covington are on this card. Probably make it so that the press conference is more fun than the actual fight card. But yeah, I think Leon Edwards is a very boring fighter. Very boring. He was a very boring champion. His fight against Colby was... I couldn't make it through it, I'll say that. And, Chris Curtis is basically just reskinned Sean Strickland. He's got a bit more power than him, but, I mean, how is Chris Curtis going to win this fight? It's by taking it to a decision. And how is Leon Edwards going to win this fight? It's either by knocking him out, which he doesn't throw enough to do that. He doesn't throw enough strikes to knock anybody out unless it's just kind of a one big power shot. But this would just be, and I mean, Chris Curtis is so bad at cutting off the cage, and Leon Edwards moves pretty well, so he would never get cut up. He would never get cornered. There'd never be an opportunity for Chris Curtis to hit him with anything strong or powerful. And he would just circle and circle and circle, and Chris Curtis would get mad, like he did in, what was that fight that he couldn't corner the guy? Jack Hermanson, I think it was, where he just couldn't corner him because he sucks at it. So he was just walking around the cage getting more and more upset. But it's like, hey man, like, it's kind of up to you to corner this guy instead of he can't go. you just can't go left. So this would be boring as hell. Just Leon Edwards moving around the cage, popping jabs at him, just leg kicking them to death, and just be a boring, boring ass fight. And we go through all this schlock, but don't worry, we got the biggest main event of all time. We got Raquel Pennington versus Juliana Pena. This was pretty close to being the main event of a pay-per-view if Alex Pereira and Khalil Roundtree didn't step in, right? It could have been what could have been, and boy, would it have been. This is like the state of the UFC today, is that this could have headlined a pay-per-view, and I think we all can kind of know that this is going to be a boring fight. I mean, neither of these fighters are going to finish the other one, like, it's just going to be ish, like jabs and crosses, and maybe Juliana Pena will hurt her. Maybe Raquel Pennington will get a takedown. But, this is going the full 25. I'd bet my house that this goes the full 25 minutes. And boy, when this comes up on UFC 307, this is the definition of a bathroom break fight. We are surely in for it. If we want to see Alex Pereira kill Khalil Roundtree, we gotta sit through this crap. So yeah, get ready for that. So again, the full fight card would be Muhammad Mokaev versus Emir Albazi. And then we got Roman Dolidze versus Michael Chiesa, Movsar Evloev versus Bryce Mitchell, Jailton Almeida versus Marcin Tybura. And then to start off the main card, Aljamain Sterling versus Marlon Chito Vera. Colby Covington versus Neil Magny, Sean Strickland versus Marvin Vettori. In the co-main event, Leon Edwards versus Chris Curtis. And finally, the headliner, the moment you've all been waiting for, Juliana Pena versus Raquel Pennington. So let me know how fast you would fall asleep if you could make it through all of these fights. Let me know, or tell me which fight you would fall asleep during. My pick would probably fall asleep at around Colby Covington versus Neil Magny. Usually have pretty good wind through the prelims, and then the edible or the drinks that I've had kind of kick in around the main card. So that will put me to sleep. Let me know if you guys think you can make it through the whole thing, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace.